very nice to meet you. And thank you for being here in this wonderful context of Culture Action Europe Beyond Many conference. We are in the wonderful tour in 2025. A great city for the food lovers and culture lovers, of course, like us. I think we will, as I mentioned, we will keep the questions quite very open. And if you would like to maybe begin, because I have been personally and professionally, I have been looking and watching all this cultural deal developed, which there are a few years now, which is an initiative of Culture Action Europe, Europa Nostra, and the European Cultural Foundation. And there is a point that maybe we can develop further apropos the financing, the financing for culture at the European Union level. So if you would like to begin a bit from your perspective, Rocio, from your perspective as a member of Culture Action Europe, and Cristina, from your perspective as Vicepresidente of Europa Nostra, what are your thoughts about this stage of the cultural deal, and then we move forward to the specific subject, please.
Cristina,
yeah.
Go.
Do you wish us to introduce ourselves a little bit, or we start with the subject?
Anyway, your professional bio below, so as you wish. Please, you can give us.
I'm here as a retired grey panther, living in between Europe and the United States, where I moved because my husband is American, but I'm still very active, especially in doing voluntary jobs, because it was impossible to leave the profession after I did work with the Italian Minister of Culture, with the European Parliament, in different fora from the stakeholders. Well, there is something so deep in my heart about Europe and the European actions for culture and cultural heritage that finally Europa Nostra said, no, you can't leave, stay here and help us. My first love has been theater, so the performing arts are the beginning of the point, and I've always worked not on stage, but backstage, providing policies, a way to support, a way to connect with the society, something that now is quite common, but because of her gray hair, 50 years ago it wasn't so common. And together, starting from Milan and from the Piccolo Teatro di Milano, we built a system of relationship, including education, economic and job opportunities, international relations, and so on, and more social aspect for a community and the society being smiling about our condition to be intercultural, not fighting, providing borders, but enjoying the difference, which is the European motto.
How beautiful. Well, Cristina has actually touched upon several things that we definitely share. So I'm Rocio, and I have been working in a international research network that focuses on the social and solidarity economy and social enterprises. And one of the lines of work that we have been developing lately has been culture and the arts. Personally, I myself have been working in the field for many years, and I actually did so in the US as well. Uh-huh. So I worked within a community art center. It was a contemporary art center, community art center in Pittsburgh, in Pennsylvania. And it's very interesting because there I had the opportunity to run one of the first social enterprises within a non-profit arts organization. And that already exposed me to different ways of precisely, thinking about how do we mobilize resources, how can we tackle the potential of the communities to sustain the mission and the actions of artists and cultural agents. So then, but again, I was born in Sevilla in southern Spain, and since the beginning, very much active, with social movements, with creative people, always, boiling, as we say, and the effervescence, of those two worlds that are just so close together. But it's true that with the work as a researcher and as a practitioner, because another thing that I do is that I'm very much involved with community culture or arts socially engaged arts, however you want to call it. There are many ways, but it definitely speaks of how culture is much more than a sector that has concrete outputs, but culture and the arts, it's actually a kind of, like the energy that cuts across all of us, and that gives us a reason to smile and to realize that there is an interdependence among us that I think culture and the arts really brings up and makes emerge. So for me, and that sounds very beautiful and everything, but I have to say that one of my main battles is actually the material conditions of artists. And this is also why through the social and solidarity economy, here in Italy they call it the terzo settore, in Spain and France it's more the social economy. Yes. So that there are tools, there are instruments that cultural agents can use, such as cooperatives, for instance, to get organized and to make sure that they have dignified labor conditions and that they can claim to be full professionals, in the labor market, just like any other profession. So that's also my. So
great. It's okay.
Yeah, please.
I think that what Rocio just said goes in the direction of your first question. So about the cultural deal for Europe. You know that when these three big important stakeholders, so Cultural Action Europe, Europa Nostra, and European Cultural Foundation, they started with the cultural deal for Europe. They decided to join their strength and their vision for a common goal. Yes. This wasn't at all normal, because if you go back in time, you say, well, okay, let's go to see a movie tonight. A movie, an intelligent movie, art house movie, or a commercial movie. The society was split. Would like intelligent movie or commercial movies? And okay, I go to see a movie or I go to theater. Theater is for the upper class, cinema is for the poor. So the silos were the standard. To go to a museum or to archaeology was not necessarily considered as to be cultural. When these three organizations, one Cultural Action Europe more concerned about advocacy, Europa Nostra is more concerned about heritage, and the European Cultural Foundation is more Yes. So when they decided to go together, they followed something that the EU absolutely wanted, because of the European Parliament at the time, was pushing to create what they call a critical mass, because being split in little groups, not knowing each other, being a little individualistic, and always saying, well, I'm a little better than the other. They are so commercial, not me. I'm supported by public fund. They are private. And the private say they are supported by public fund. We know what is the reality. Until you don't break these walls, it was no future. The Cultural Deal for Europe was an important step, demonstrating that even the bigger stakeholders organization, they understood that the critical mass was key. And that was exactly what the EU was looking for. And that's why I think that this subject is more important than ever now that Europe is facing, the European Union is facing priorities, very challenging priorities, like security, peace, competitiveness, and being fractions. We have no hope to be seen, acting together we have a chance.
We have a chance, absolutely.
No more than this, but we have a chance.
Actually, it's very, even if it looks very collective, and it has to be very, very pinpoint, very attentive, because the advocacy work takes a long road, and then you have to be very specific. You have to be very, very agile in reaction. Otherwise, if you are, like a silo, as you mentioned, or you go like a bolid like that, and you wouldn't be able to touch so many points, like, for example, cultural deal wanted and really touches one. You mentioned the working condition, the status of the artist as well, and this format of cooperative actually is a very good response and a good alternative in order to take into account this type of diversity. I mean, you go back to the definition. What is an artist? And then you stop. Okay, because it's too much to discuss, and then you have all this regulation, national based, apropos social security, and so on and so forth. So actually, we'll keep that for another discussion. The working condition and the status of the artist. If you want to migrate a bit about the financing, for example, I was just telling you before as well that in Romania the percentage for culture is very, very low. I will not put it on record. I will give the link directly. But in these advocacy efforts, because it's also a collective of organizations with different missions, but also pinpointing different emergencies. This on one hand, on the other hand, is also this Creative Europe program, which is considered like a flagship of a type of financing. But there are also, for example, I think 1 year ago or so, on European Union website is a tool, a cultural guide, and actually there are 21 programs, a financing program, which are actually put together, and you would use like a tool to select, and actually you would see you are a cultural organization, but you can also apply for funding within for example, an agricultural fund, or you can see funding in a social-based or a citizen-oriented fund. So actually, this would be an opportunity for us, the sector, to why not broaden the interdisciplinarity of our work, and why not begin this with funding? Actually, connect with other agents, as you call it. We call them cultural operators, with other operators, and to also access funding together. So, how would you see this, and also in the big framework of culture compass as well? But how would you see this putting forward the priorities? For example, when you want to increase, because it's also is the mission of the initiative to have 2% of the budget directed to the culture. How would you be able to push what is more important? The heritage. I mean, the heritage is an emergency. It will be distracted. I mean, the artists are not fairly paid. The AI Act is not really there with the protection of the creative and cultural industries. How would you put in an advocacy a strategy what is an emergency? So actually it's a collective effort, but also is a very specific direction of the organization.
Yeah, well, there's so many points that you have touched upon.
I know. I wanted to open so many doors. You can choose whatever you want.
The first thing that comes to mind is that actually advocacy, it's a marathon. It's a long-term run, you know. And I think that short-term approaches to policy making can be very counterproductive, and I really think that this is also what we have been seeing. Interdisciplinarity, absolutely, that's precisely what Cristina was saying, that getting out of the silos, it's actually what can guarantee for a critical mass or have a bigger chance of having of reaching and representing a critical mass, but also is what can get us out of our, disciplinary, even, egocentric and narcissist approaches to what we need. And I think that this is also something that we have been able, and we are, by sharing spaces, sharing conversations, sharing battles, you get to know each other and you get to understand standpoints that at the beginning you didn't, because it was not possible, So, for instance, for me, the cultural deal, it's a very ambitious plan, 2% considering where we're going and considering the priorities, but it's actually not ambitious enough, and we had some people already saying, we should maybe go, higher, but I think it's an immense and very hopeful beginning for collective action from an articulate voice or set of voices from cultural leaders. Regarding, so as I was writing alliances, so alliances are crucial. It's not a fight. You see, this idea that we are competing for a piece of cake, we need to get over this, and I think that if we want to be cultural leaders, either as networks, either as individuals, as collectives, we have to realize that that competing is the word that has taken us here. Is the verb that has taken us here. So I think that in sense of, if we are to make changes, and semantic changes are urgent, we need to cooperate, we need to listen, we need to care for the other, and we need to be very blunt about the reality, your reality and my reality. And I think that because in the end, the reality that we live, it's actually that one, we live in a world that now has also very urgent issues. The ecological emergency that we're all against. I mean, that's the only way out. So alliances, and then the other thing that you were saying, and that I think with the SDGs, we are also learning. There's this other very important campaign for the cultural development goal. I mean, it's not by chance that culture has been forgotten or considered to be everywhere. It's not there, but because it's everywhere.
Okay. It's Julie.
So I mean, I think that this idea of mainstreaming culture, that should be the priority. The priority should be, and then there are many others that we would need to agree, that we are negotiating, that we will put forward as an agenda, but the priority, it's literally realizing that yes, we need a culture budget, a budget for culture and the arts, but we also need other areas in policy making to consider culture and the arts as a way forward. And we already have examples. We already have examples of instances, either municipalities, either national governments. They're absolutely outliers, as we call them, statistics. They're like the greatest exceptions, but they exist, and what we learn from those cases is that the people involved in those programs, in those areas of government, they are transformed because they all of a sudden discover another way of looking at the world, working, sharing, having this interaction with colleagues, with citizens, So I think that the word, alliances, cooperation, and mainstreaming, it's crucial when we think about funding and financing culture.
It's a very good point.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Because this is a key point both for financial resources and for approaches to reach policies. And the two apparently in oppositions aspects are mainstreaming or devoting specific funding for specific needs. So just maybe 20 minutes ago, I was in a conference with a colleague from Ukraine, and Ior from Odessa is saying, well, we are discussing about the reconstruction, and we absolutely need to put the specific lines about the fact that the reconstruction of the cultural heritage places need to be done according with the European standards, because we risk to have this, cement everywhere, and so some level of specificity is absolutely needed. If not, if you decided to play in an orchestra, is the same than working 40 hours in a restaurant. You need specificity, but at the same time, without the mainstreaming, we don't go anywhere. So that's why, thanks to the fact that politics is important and the persons we elect for the European Parliament are key in defining this aspect. You can't underestimate how important it is to have intelligent and dedicated members of the European Parliament, not only at the national level. So long ago, the EU decided to create the European Year of Cultural Heritage. It was the year 2018. And it happened at the time that we started to, I say we because I was working on the subject at the time, to mainstream culture in 26 different DGs. And we said, well, but when we speak about cohesion in the less developed regions, for example, the people live. Why? They live for different reasons, mainly economical, but they don't stay, they don't have enough services, and services are not only hospitals and schools, but they are, of course, cinema, theaters, cultural centers, opportunities, education and the cities. Well, each city is coping with the problem that the deindustrialization is leaving entire part of the cities abandoned, like the place where we are in Turin now. But it's possible to make them vibrant places where the young people, they may start. And the number, you go to the submarine archaeology, we go to the looting of arts from the war area. You go to technologies for restoration, which high physical and biological and chemical needs. You go to artificial intelligence, you go to copyright. So there are so many aspects which are related, and that's what we call mainstreaming. Going to the budget now. And as a result of the European Year of Cultural Heritage, we have many results, but this special collection of opportunities. We'd like to apply for European money. Don't look only on Creative Europe, which is a direct program. Look all in all these areas. Looking in all these areas, be loyal, is quite frustrating, because you have to demonstrate that because you restore a cinema, the local average of income will increase.
You have to translate in numbers.
You have to translate in a different mentality. It's what Rocio just said. So you have to learn a different language, and the different language is the language of research, language of criteria, the language of other languages, which is extremely good for culture, because the cultural people sometimes is so focused on his own belly that they lose even the perception of how important they are for the entire society. Back to the budget, if you look at the budget, combining the 26 areas, what do we do in the cities, in the cohesion, in the region, in the external trading, exporting, movies, in universities, in education, in technical, if you count all this, there is countries already reaching the 2%. If you look at the direct funding for culture, you are always much lower than this. Now with the different, Europe is now really challenged by war, by migrations, so Europe risks to be the most important places in the world where freedom of expression are defended. And obviously it asks for money. And where the money comes from, the risk is to say, doesn't matter. What is not at the core of our...
Apropos emergence.
And now our effort, combined effort, is to demonstrate that we are a key aspect
in this
emergency moment.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the reason why we are here in Turin now. This is the concern.
Absolutely.
So it's very important to put this in a context, actually, because I was discussing with Rocio before about this type of, this is technicality, this is content. Actually, it's not. So actually, how you put together? I mean, financing is a tool, but how do you reach that tool? I mean, how do you demonstrate? You were talking also about measuring and evaluation. You have to. I mean, I think in our sector it's quite harder to show numbers, to show economical outcome, to prove. But actually, this is a very smart approach that actually you see culture within everything. So it's culture and health, it's culture and democracy, then it's culture and technology. And so actually you actually show that it's a natural thing. I mean, as you mentioned, it's everywhere. It's like air. It's everywhere. You don't take it into account. I mean, culture. You go to the theater. No, this is not necessarily. Not only. Yeah. And on the social part as well. I think.
My turn.
You could go. It goes and comes with inspiration.
But really, this is a key question, really, because you have to match some specific tool, because without specificity, you can't have a specific, for example, legislation for the intermittent, for the workers. So you need to go deep in the field. So you need to have money and regulation, especially devoted to the subject. If you don't have it, it's too risky. But at the same time, you can't imagine to have so much money, especially because the European treaties, they don't say that culture and education are part of the common. They are not part of the common basket. They are there because they are part of the mobility, but they are not specifically given to the EU. And again, I want to say something which is potentially interesting for our viewers. For example, to change the criteria, obviously, if you ask me, there is an intrinsic value in culture. Why are you asking me? Obviously, I'm more happy when I come out from a nice... But you know that there is university, especially Harvard, they ask for a sample of the saliva, because the saliva include the endorphins.
Really?
If you come in to the theater and your endorphins are low, and you get out of theater and your endorphins are so high, you can measure
your data.
them.
Look, your data was there.
When I do this example, I laugh because it's so crazy to ask the people to put saliva on a piece of it before and after. Crazy. But in a way, it explains that we need criteria, and we have to match these criteria with the others cultural areas. And again, it's important because EU has been able to change the criteria of NACE, which is a Eurostat international level. So you have to reach the top levels, and you can do it as a stakeholder. You can do it only with European institutions. So in order to change the measurements, you have to act as Europe. You can do it as a person. And in Europe, we do it.
Again, many things that now are even more sparked with what Cristina just said. So, I mean, I get a little bit frustrated when people say that we are lacking data. There is a lot of data. She just mentioned this study, on the saliva, which I didn't know, but I mean, it would not surprise anyone who lives culture, and so, we have our bad moments and everything, but we know why we're here and we know why culture is here. And even when it makes you cry, it's making you more human. We can measure it in terms of happiness, but also in terms of humanity, being more human.
More than quality of life.
Which is another, dimension. But we have data. And, I love the report that I think it was last year that said culture and democracy. The evidence, it was a report launched by the Commission, and it was blunt. I mean, if you want more, okay, we can produce more information, but the data is there. You have the barometer, from a few weeks ago. What data, what more data do you want? Still, we will continue to produce it because we know that we need it. But I think that we have to be very, very careful with the eternal request for data. I mean, it's a trap. It's a trap. Completely agree with what Cristina was saying about the instances that we have to reach, at the European level, makes it so that we have to work with European institutions as allies. This is how we transform policy tools and policy institutions. It's working with and aligning again ourselves with. But I think so. The state of culture. I was just thinking. When we think about what is it that the sector wants, what is it that is really intrinsic about culture. I think that again, it's good that we know it. It's good that we have data about it. But I think that we also now have to act together on those premises, and I think that for a long time, and she has said it, we were atomized, and there's still a lot of atomization. Let's not fool ourselves, And I think that when you go down to the individual level, and let me just go there a little bit, because you see the atomization of individual workers, individual agents, who feel totally isolated, and I think for me, see, I get goosebumps. I mean, it's about policy making, but we know that it's also about, articulating, encouraging, and moving, the people that we're working for. And in many cases, they don't feel connected. And more and more and more, you can feel it. And particularly, I work with lots of young people and I see how engaged they are, but there's a huge majority of young people who are not engaged, And nevertheless, they live culture every day. And they enjoy culture, and they are culture actors or agents in many cases, So why am I saying that? Because I think that also, and this I take, for instance, speaking from Culture Action Europe, at the organization and this network, what we are currently doing also is realizing the power of decentralization. We're going to activate, and we will probably be talking about this today, actually we are talking about that today, are the regional hubs. This idea that we also need intermediate instances that work as, channels up and channels down, that it's a little bit like an intermediate, like a translator as well, of policies that cook up in Brussels, in EU Parliament, Commission, all the different committees, but also in the territories, so that there's not that disconnection that sometimes we find between what is being proposed and it's happening in the territories. And lastly, we had the second meeting of the Spain Hub last week in Madrid. And it was very interesting. We were thinking also what Cristina also said, that usually culture and education are not identified as the core. It's not the core. Well, what they say, particularly with regards to budgets, is the whole subsidiarity principle and the respect, that this is a part of the budget of the policy package that sort of belongs to the member states. I mean, I think, and this is really my call out to policymakers at European level and even supra-European. I mean, if supra-national level funding has been needed, it's now. Because when you think and you really see how national culture budgets are being cut, but then also there's a political turn towards regimes that are much more oppressive and that are really cutting the funding to people who are not, following the dictates, of the new government, of the new far-right government. So I think that it is now also, if we are to make
again.
Exactly. So talking about what is the role of culture right now, well, allow the cultural sector, the cultural agents, to have that voice that only they can have. One, but particularly that they can enable citizens to have, which if you don't have cultural agents, it would be much more complicated.
And plus, it's this instrumentalization of culture that takes place actually in the far right. They work with what? With culture. They are working with culture,
area.
with history.
It's the first area of government. When there are a couple of articles very interesting.
When you want to use that, I mean, it's
when they touch power, when they reach governments, that's the first area of policy of government that they reclaim.
Yes.
Check it out.
Yeah,
it doesn't fail. It doesn't fail. So that should give us an idea.
I'm very happy that we discuss financing and budgeting in this context, because usually you don't. Oh my God, how much? What's the percent? But actually, if you don't put it in a context, then it's only numbers. Oh, you would like an increase. Why? I have to demonstrate. I demonstrated. You give me money. So it doesn't have to be transactional, or who's working for who, who's giving the money to whom, and so on and so forth. So actually, is this approach like an environment or like a network, or I think it's a very good perspective.
May I add a little example?
Yes, please.
About this. When you speak about, I don't know, a restoration of a big monument, you devote quite a lot of money, and part of this money may be European money. So you may have two approaches. One, the first approach is to follow the European rules, so to respect the originality, to do a study. Well, okay. But the purpose is key. So you want to restore a place, and it takes quite a lot of the 2% to go there.
Yeah.
But this risks to be something well done or stay closed, because you don't have a business plan in advance. Playing obviously with the cultural tourism, which is key. But cultural tourism is maybe a coin with its two sides. So to control it and to decide how many and which kind of expertise, of skills you need, and in which sense the community may feel concerned. Because if you don't do it since the beginning, you know, I've seen so many theater restored with cement stages. With a cement stage, the acoustic.
You've never been on stage.
Never been on stage. Or with not enough height to put the scenes. So you have to combine a specific expertise and skills in a feasible business plan with specific expertise in restoration. So this is a way to just to tell you that money plus specific skills plus job preparation. So they are all related and all together. Very often, when you have engineers very good in doing good restoration, but they don't match it with our people, the result is that you can't use it. And you invest money that doesn't help to create a circular, sustainable economy. And this is key even to understand if this money is really spent for culture or is spent in a cultural framework without a cultural output. Both for the visitors, but mainly for the local communities. I think that Spain and Italy share some experience in the subject.
Absolutely.
I think we have to repeat that. The time is up.